On March 28, 1592, in southern Moravia, likely in the village of Nivnice near Uherský Brod, the life story of John Amos Comenius begins. A man destined to become one of the greatest figures Czechia has ever given to the world. Over the 78 years granted to him, he will lay the foundations of modern pedagogy, earn the title Teacher of Nations, publish philosophical works that will surpass his era in many ways, and leave his mark in countless other fields of human knowledge, seeming almost impossibly vast from today's perspective. He will compose hymns, create unique maps, record prophetic visions, and write about geometry, geodesy, faith in God and His Church. And more than that, despite the devastating losses and disappointments life will throw his way, he will remain a humble, honest, and deeply faithful man, striving for reconciliation and the betterment of the world, even amid the horrors of the 30 Years' War. Comenius was born during the Catholic reign of Habsburgs. His father was a prominent member of the Protestant Unity of the Brethren. He likely adopted the name Comenius after the village of Komňa, located on the modern Moravian-Slovak border, where he lived and which is also sometimes mentioned as a possible birthplace of John Amos. Around the age of 12, Comenius lost his parents and was taken in by his aunt from the village of Stražnice. It was here that he first encountered the full extent of human cruelty brought about by war. The village was plundered by the army of Hungarian Prince Bocskai, who had rebelled against the ruling Habsburgs. At the age of 16, Comenius began attending secondary school in the town of Přerov. 3 years later, he was studying at the university in Herborn, Germany, and later in Heidelberg. During this time, he started writing his first works, including an ambitious Czech Latin dictionary, which he regarded as his life's cornerstone project. In this dictionary, Comenius aimed not only to explain grammar, but also to collect and record every word he encountered, including colloquialisms, loanwords, and dialectal expressions. This extraordinary work would remain unfinished, but we'll return to that later. After studying abroad, Comenius returned home. At 24, he was ordained as a priest of the Unity of the Brethren and became a preacher in the town of Fulnek. There he met his first wife, Magdalena, with whom he soon had 2 children. This was one of the few truly joyful periods of his life. Things were about to take a dramatic turn. In 1620, the Czech Protestants suffered defeat from the Catholic Emperor at the Battle of White Mountain. Later, the leaders of the anti-Habsburg uprising were executed in Prague's Old Town Square. A crackdown on Protestants began. Emperor Ferdinand II revoked the religious freedoms, and the 30 Years' War, a brutal conflict between Protestants and Catholics, was in full swing. For the Protestant Unity of the Brethren, dark days had arrived. Comenius refused to convert to Catholicism and went into hiding. During this time, he suffered a devastating personal tragedy. During a plague epidemic, his wife and both of his children died. Amid this hardship, he wrote his most famous philosophical piece, The Labyrinth of the World and the Paradise of the Heart. It is a deeply melancholic read. Comenius portrays himself as a pilgrim wandering through a city that represents the world, a place full of deception and misery. There is no escape and no comfort. In the end, the desperate pilgrim sees only one solution: to open his heart to God. Two years later, Comenius remarried, taking as his wife Marie Dorota Cyrilova, the daughter of one of the leading figures of his church. They will have 4 children together, 3 daughters and a son. It might have seemed that life was turning for the better, but this was only an illusion. In 1628, when Comenius was 36, Emperor Ferdinand II issued a decree stating that Catholicism became the only permitted faith. For Comenius and his family, there was only one option: to leave their homeland and become exiles, people without a home. For the rest of his life, Comenius would cling to the hope of one day returning, but that dream would never come true. He still had 42 years ahead of him, but he would never see his homeland again, a loss he considered as tragic as his personal bereavements. Comenius first moved to Leszno, Poland, home to a large Unity of the Brethren community. Here, he wrote pedagogical works that earned him fame across Europe: School of Infancy on the upbringing of young children by their parents, The Gate of Languages Unlocked on foreign language teaching, and his foundational work on educational methods, The Great Didactic. Suddenly, Comenius was renowned. Intellectuals throughout Protestant Europe marveled at the depth of his ideas and how far ahead of his time he was in his thinking. Invitations to lecture at prestigious universities began pouring in, but he declined them for many years. He finally accepted an invitation to England, where he addressed both Parliament and the Royal Society. His next journey took him to Sweden, where Queen Christina and her advisors commissioned textbooks based on his teaching methods. However, these plans fell by the wayside when Comenius instead immersed himself in another monumental project, a 7-book series summarizing human knowledge, which he believed could help improve the world. He called this concept Pansophia, and his ambitious but unfinished work bore the telling title General Consultation on an Improvement of All Things Human. It is now 1648, Comenius is 56, and new hardships are upon him. While the terrible 30 Years' War finally ends, the resulting Peace of Westphalia dashes all hopes for Czech exiles to return home. The principle applied, whose realm, his religion, retroactively legitimizes the harsh Catholicization of the Czech lands. To make matters worse, that same year, Comenius's beloved wife, Marie Dorota, passes away. In 1651, Comenius accepts an invitation from Prince Rákóczi to Sarospatak in Hungary to reform the local education system. By this time, he was married for the 3rd time. He wed Jana Gajusova, more than 30 years his junior, with whom he would remain until his death. At Rákóczi's court, Comenius finally has the opportunity to put his revolutionary methods into practice. He teaches students in entirely different ways. He authors the book called Orbis Pictus, The World in Pictures, based on the idea that children learn best through images. Incidentally, Comenius illustrated the book himself. He also writes Schola Ludus, School by Play, a cornerstone of his philosophy, which most educators of his time reject.
Vy si opravdu nedovedete představit, pane Tolnaj, že by učení mohlo děti bavit?
Učení není zábava. Těm lenochům prospěje pouze rákoska.
Comenius devised numerous principles that remain relevant today. One notable example is his division of the educational process into 4 6-year cycles. The first, the Mother's School, focused on early education by the mother. The second, from ages 7 to 12, covered elementary schooling and basic education. The third, up to 18, included secondary school and advanced knowledge. The fourth was university. Between 24 and 26, he suggested travel to gain experience and complete one's education. After completing his work in Sarospatak, Comenius returns to Leszno. There he faces yet another tragedy. A fire destroys the town, consuming his unfinished manuscripts, including the ambitious Latin-Czech dictionary he had worked on his entire life.
Nemusíme jít!
Jděte, poběžím za vámi. 40 let mojí práce. Moje knihy.
After the fire in Leszno, Comenius moves with his wife to Amsterdam. Here, he finally finds peace, living comfortably, working extensively, and, as a bishop of the unity of the brethren, sending funds to his fellow believers in Central Europe. He mingles with the local elite, including painter Rembrandt van Rijn, sees his educational works fully published, and continues to dream of reconciliation among Christians so he could return home. But that's not going to happen. John Amos Comenius passed away in November 1670, surrounded by his wife Jana and his son Daniel, who had assisted him in completing his writings. At the age of 78, he left this world feeling he had failed in his efforts to reform human affairs. Today, we know that could not be further from the truth.